Greetings, comrades. My name is Gigantles, and in today's episode, as you see from the title of this video, I'll basically be refuting anti-Christian memes. I already did refuting anti-biblical memes, some memes that basically criticize the Bible. This one will be concerning Christianity in general. Okay, not just Catholicism, which I'll do another video, but Christianity in general. Though I will admit that I'm only going to be looking at one meme in this video, but this meme covers a lot of material. So that's why I'm going to be spending all my time focusing on this one meme, because there's 10 points in it, which I'm going to cover and basically explain why they're wrong, or just what I made. It's almost like my sort of not motto, but it's just a common theme I always find. Like that first meme I did in my refuting anti-biblical memes video, I said that when people make memes against us, it's based upon a mistranslation, a misunderstanding, out of context, or maybe taking something metaphorically or literally when they shouldn't have. And you can see it with this sort of stuff. And there's also a lot of poor logic in this. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to look at this meme and basically analyze it and go through every one of the 10 points in it. So to read them out, so I'm going to firstly read them out for you so you can understand exactly what sort of thing we're going to be getting into. So, 10 signs you are an unquestioning Christian. 10. You vigorously deny the existence of thousands of gods claimed by other religions, but feel outraged when someone denies the existence of your god. 9. You feel insulted and dehumanized when scientists say that people evolved from lesser life forms, but you have no problem with the biblical claim that we were created from dirt. 8. You laugh at polytheists, but you have no problem believing in a Trinity God. 7. Your face turns purple when you hear of the atrocities attributed to Allah, but you don't even flinch when hearing about how God/Jehovah slaughtered all the babies of Egypt in Exodus and ordered the elimination of entire ethnic groups in Joshua, including women, children, and animals. 6. You laugh at Hindu beliefs that deify humans and Greek claims about gods sleeping with women, but you have no problem believing that the Holy Spirit impregnated Mary, who then gave birth to a man-god who got killed, came back to life, and then ascended into the sky. 5. You're willing to spend your life looking for little loopholes in the scientifically established age of the Earth, 4.55 billion years, but you find nothing wrong with believing dates recorded by prehistoric tribesmen sitting in their tents and guessing that the Earth was a couple of generations old. 4. You believe that the entire population of this planet, with the exception of those who share your beliefs, though excluding those in all rival sects, will spend eternity in an infinite hell of suffering. Yet you consider your religion the most tolerant and loving. 3. While modern science, history, geology, and biology and physics have failed to convince you otherwise, some idiot rolling around on the floor speaking in tongues may be all the evidence you need. 2. You define 0.001% as a high success rate when it comes to answered prayers. You consider that to be evidence that the prayer works, and you think that the remaining 99.99% failure was simply the will of God. 1. You actually know a lot less than many atheists and agnostics do about the Bible, Christianity, and church history, but still call yourself a Christian. Christians, it's okay as long as you believe. That's the sort of content we're going to be dealing with today. And some of you may have already seen the fallacies and problems with this sort of argument, but I'll be going through them one by one to explain to all those who don't know, and also maybe go into depths that you may not have thought about. But to be honest, when I see memes like this, I'm more consumed by pity than anything. The fact that people genuinely believe that this is what we believe, or that they actually believe this about us, because it shows that they don't really understand anything about us. And I'll cover the first point again. But clearly, if this person who wrote this is a true atheist or agnostic, then they've clearly proven themselves that they don't actually know much about Christianity, the Bible, or church history. The fact that they say something like this, because even though it could be said that a lot of atheists and agnostics do know more about that sort of stuff than most Christians, this person clearly doesn't, because he's taken it all out of context or misunderstood it. So, point 10, which concerns denying the existence of thousands of other gods and stuff, but then we feel outraged when someone denies the existence of our God. Well, again, like I said, I don't feel outraged that there are atheists out there, or polytheists or whatever. Rather, I'm more concerned that they don't actually understand the point of Christianity, because if they truly understood Christianity, then it would convert. But I don't feel outraged at all. And yes, I will deny the existence of thousands of other gods, and that's actually due to a logical conclusion, or rather a misuse of the title God. I said it before in one of my other videos, in my video GT, Gigantal Theory, Are We Gods? Basically, when you look at the natures of these pagan gods, you see that what makes them a god compared to the Judeo-Christian God is completely different. Our God, he's many things. Yeah, he's completely divine, and because of his divine nature that he possesses, which makes him divine, he is, well, he's a spirit. He's effectively immortal. He's eternal. He's all-knowing. He's all-powerful. He's all-present, and all the sorts of other attributes. When you look at the pagan gods, you see that they aren't really God. Well, they aren't divine in that same sense, because their divine essence, they've got a limited amount of it, and they can give it and they can take it, or temporarily take it from others. They can die. They're not eternal. They are born. They have a beginning, and they can also have an end if the conditions are right. They are also very human in how they behave. For instance, I mean, half of like Greek mythology is Zeus was horny, effectively. Okay, our God does not act like that. Okay, he is not corrupted by human emotions or feelings or anything like that. Okay, he does not behave human at all. He's beyond human. Whereas the gods, the pagan gods, are usually, they do act quite human. They are influenced by human things, and so when you look at it this way, you realize that our God is not a creation of man, because he's simply too critical of man. Like we benefit more in death from our God than we do in life. Okay, the pagans, they benefit more from their gods in life than you do in death, which is one of the reasons why you usually see them try and justify which is one of the reasons why you see in pagan mythology they try and justify their behavior or whatever by getting on the good side of the gods. But we see that the possibility of our God being created by humans versus the pagan gods being created by humans, the pagan gods are more likely to be just fictitious compared to our God. And then of course we can look at the aspects of the universe, saying, okay, well, you know, the properties of the universe, there's order, it came from something that's eternal and, you know, not physical, or, you know, something beyond time and space, because time and space didn't exist when the universe was created and all that. Whereas when you look at the pagan gods, you see that they weren't even the first beings created, especially, and I'm thinking back to Greek mythology here. They weren't the first beings created. They actually came after the Titans and the giants and all that. And then for like Egyptian mythology, there is still debate over whether or not Ma'at emerged from. No, her name's not Nephti, I think. I can't remember her name. She's one of the oldest Egyptian gods, but the goddesses. But the point is that when you look at the attributes of these gods and you compare it to the universe, you see that it's very incompatible. And when it comes to something like Hinduism, which they believe that the universe is eternal, we know that's wrong because of stuff like the Big Bang. And so it's effectively a matter of theological and scientific conclusions that you realize, okay, the Judeo-Christian God is the most likely God to exist out of all the pagan gods out there. Which is why we can confidently deny the existence of these thousands of pagan gods, especially since that technically they'd all be dead, because they've no longer, because for the last almost 2,000 years they haven't been able to really feed on the prayers of the people that worshipped them once upon a time. I mean, that's especially after the work of the missionaries. I could talk about the whole thing about what the Spanish did in South America at another point in time, but I remember reading a letter by an Incan who actually cursed their gods for not coming to help them against the Spanish. I know that the Spanish technically weren't coming in the name of the Judeo-Christian God, because the church would condemn their activities in South America, in general throughout the whole Spanish Empire. But the point is that when a nation rejects the gods that it worships, those gods are effectively dead because no one's worshipping them. There's no substance to them anymore. But the Judeo-Christian God exists regardless of that. Okay, just look how many times humanity was corrupted throughout history, especially the Jews, and he was still constant regardless of that. So that's why point 1 is wrong, effectively. The 9th point is sought and dehumanized concerning evolution from lower life forms versus creation from dirt. Well, firstly, assuming that young Earth creationism is correct, so what? If I had to believe, I mean, well, what do you think sounds better? An atheistic evolution, okay? And I'm not saying that all atheism is. I'll go back into theistic evolution another point in time. But what do you think sounds better? Atheistic evolution, where you are just developed pond scum controlled by blind forces, versus a god that tried to mold you from lesser life forms over billions of years, or that God himself shaped you from the dirt with his hands. You were literally formed in the hands of the God who created you. Okay, he took dirt and molded you from it. What's so bad about that? I mean, I can go to the whole creationism, evolutionism thing another point in time, but what's the problem with that again? Like, seriously, I have no problem with it either way, because in the end God created you, and I'm not. Again, of course, we can look at the scientific side of atheistic evolution, which is absolutely absurd. I can go that into a whole point about that another point in time. But the point is here, why should we feel insulted and dehumanized? Again, either way, God creates us. One way He creates us directly by His own hands, and the other way He's taken His time to create us. So there's really no problem with it. Point 8, concerning polytheism and the Trinity God. So what? This person clearly doesn't understand what the Holy Trinity is. Polytheists believe in multiple divine natures, and because there are multiple divine natures, there are multiple gods. The Judeo-Christian God consists of one divine nature shared equally and fully between the three persons of the Holy Trinity, which means that they are all the same God, just different distinct persons within that same God. So this is just a misunderstanding of what Trinitarianism is. 7. My face turns purple. I've never had my face turn purple once in my life. The atrocities attributed to Allah. We Christians believe that Muhammad is a false prophet, which would mean that everything committed in the name of Allah is effectively secular men pretending to be religious and doing it in the name of a deity that inspired them to do it. But when you compare that to what God, and like this person doesn't even know the name of God. The name is Yahweh, not Jehovah. Jehovah is a mistranslation. Yahweh was the original. Anyway, to look at what Yahweh did in the Old Testament, so what? God has the authority to take life whenever He deems it necessary to. Okay, I did this in my other video, why God has technically never killed anyone. But when God tells someone to go and take the life of someone else, it's not them killing someone, because it's not their authority that they're killing someone else. They're taking that life because God told them to. When God told Joshua to take out the ethnic groups in Canaan, they didn't take out everyone, because God would tell them not to intermarry with those same ethnic groups, which would be impossible if they were all wiped out. And B, those ethnic groups, or at least the majority of them are wiped out, they practice things such as child sacrifice when those children were still alive. Okay, they would put babies on the arms of red-hot statues, and when they were burning to death, to stop them hearing the screams of those children, they would play drums very loudly and trumpets and tambourines and stuff. Okay, these ethnic groups, if the best way that Israel could interact with them was through God telling them to destroy them, then just think about how corrupted those nations were. Because when you see his character, that he can only do things, he's all good, he's all just, he's all knowing, you realize, okay, he is justified by his sheer nature, so what could possibly justify such a response to this? Again, I've no problem with that point 7 either. And concerning the children, well, I've already said, I said in that same video already, and the fact, yes, some people did survive from those ethnic groups. Also, God was, if only, and this is not a pro-choice argument, if God says that a child would be better off with him in heaven or in the limb of the fathers than they would be alive, then he has every right to say that, but we do not. So there's really nothing wrong with point 7 at all. Just a misunderstanding about God's character and how we Christians view Muhammad. Concerning the Hindu beliefs that deify humans and then Greek demigods. Well, this again proves that they have no idea about theology at all. Firstly, the Hindu beliefs that deify humans, that's them receiving the divine nature for them to become gods themselves. But we Christians don't believe that humans can become divine by receiving the divine nature. The only reason why in Christianity and Judaism we have people who could be considered gods is because God gave them that title because he was showing that they were doing things in his name. Okay, for instance, the judges would have been in a sense being called God because they are partaking in the divine nature through grace, not because they were of the divine nature. Okay, there's a difference between grace and nature. And again, this is in my Are We Gods video. So we don't deify humans, as in we don't make them into gods. But the closest thing we get to deifying humans is when we say, okay, because they are doing God's will on earth, they are considered part of his family. Because they are his sons and daughters, we could consider them gods. Though we don't call these Christians and judges and Jews, we don't call them gods anymore, and the reason why is because that could be very easily misunderstood. I mean, clearly this person misunderstood everything about Judeo-Christianity, and so we don't call them gods anymore. We just say they are children of God. Okay, then that way you don't confuse them with being deified. And concerning the Greek part, or the Greek myth part, Jesus was not a demigod. Okay, a demigod means that half their nature was human and half their nature was divine. Okay, except Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh, he was 2/3 divine and 1/3 human. But Jesus was both God and human, and not as in he had one nature that was half human, half divine, but he had two full natures within him. One of those natures was fully divine, and one of those natures was fully human, and they were all mixed together into one. And that led to the Chalcedonianism, and which is part of Diophysitism, which means two complete natures. In my words, I say that the human and divine natures were superimposed within one another. They look like they're one, but that's just because the two natures are superimposed within one another. For instance, if you took two cubes of equal size and superimposed them within one another, it will look like there was only one cube, but really there's two. So that automatically destroys that point concerning Christ's natures versus demigods' natures. This is going to sound a bit awkward. The Greek gods, rather any pagan god, whenever they impregnated a mortal woman, it involved intercourse, okay? And the Blessed Virgin Mary was constantly a virgin, okay? When the Holy Spirit came upon her, it was not the same way that these pagan gods came along and impregnated these mortal women, okay? That is not what happened. And so what about the resurrection? Again, what's wrong with that? The difference between that versus any of the other claims of how pagan characters or people in pagan mythology were resurrected is that Jesus' resurrection is actually historically verifiable through both Christian, biblical, and pagan sources. Point 5, and this relates back to young Earth creationism. Firstly, I want to say that in my church, you can believe young Earth creationism or theistic evolution. It doesn't really matter. I will say that that this person here who's lumping everyone in together with young Earth creationism is wrong. I'm not sure exactly which group is more dominant, but it's definitely wrong to just lump everyone together as one. So let's just assume for a little bit that all Christians were theistic evolutionists. That will completely destroy this entire point of this argument. Okay? Again, this is relying on an atheist or agnostic, whatever, a critic of the Christianity interpreting the Bible however they want. Okay? Again, taking things literally and metaphorically when they shouldn't have. So that completely annihilates his point. But now let's just assume that all Christians were young Earth creationists. So what? Again, this is just a critic looking at the Bible, trying to interpret it however they want to try and undermine Christianity. When again, they don't have any sort of authority in any of the points they make. I mean, if any of you out there who don't really know what young Earth creationism is, I'd recommend that you actually do look it up and do research on it before you start criticizing it and calling them unscientific. Because I have some friends who are young Earth creationists. And they do have credible cases, okay? They are scientific out there. There are doctors of science out there, people who have doctorates and masters and bachelors who are young Earth creationists. And you do have a point to make. It's just that people don't respect them enough usually to listen to them. But again, whether or not you take the dates in like Genesis and stuff literally or not, that's not exactly for an atheist or agnostic to make a decision about whether or not that's credible or not. Because they're really, from memes like this, you can see they're very close-minded, okay? So that automatically indicates quite a lot of bias. But so what if those dates were, if those dates were meant to be interpreted literally, and so the Earth isn't that old? So what if literally an all-knowing God, okay, said that yes, the Earth is not billions of years old, okay, so he knows everything, he was there, he told people to write it this way, would you believe him? Okay, if literally the person who knew everything came down and said the Earth is not billions of years old, would you believe him or would you reject it because the implications of him being right would mean you'd have to be religious? You've got to get over this bias first before you talk about whether or not Christians believe the Earth is young or old, because otherwise you're just going to go in there with bias. You're not really going to listen to people's opinions or their takes on it or the evidence that they provide, because they usually look at the same evidence, because both evolutionists and young Earth creationists look at the same evidence, but they just interpret it differently, okay? The evidence does not speak for itself. Clearly in this case it proves it doesn't, because otherwise these critics would come to the same conclusions that Christians do in regards to the Bible. But they just look at verses of the Bible out of context and interpret that as saying, oh yeah, Christianity is immoral, when that's very much wrong. Atheists and agnostics will be, like 99.9% of them, will have to take the old Earth answer, because it's the only one that supports their worldview. Unless they actually say that, okay, well, we're open-minded, we're not going to criticize you if you believe differently from us. But the person who made this meme clearly is not one of those people. Point 4. Now, I will say I'm not technically speaking for all Christians here, because there's simply so many different versions of it that I'm not going to try and justify all the claims. But in my church, what happens is if you don't have the faith in God, whether or not you're a pagan, or you lived before Christ, or you just had a misunderstanding of Christianity because of the way you were raised or the Christians around you, or you never had the opportunity to grow closer to Christ, or maybe if you're a Protestant and you didn't understand my Catholicism properly, what happens is when you die, you go to the limbo of the fathers, and you basically reside there. Okay, the Jews also go there, and the Muslims and everyone else, who they had the works to get to heaven. They were good people, but they just didn't have the faith. But it was not because of their own fault they didn't have the faith. And then what happens? What happens is on the second judgment. So when just before the kingdom of God is established forever on earth, the New Jerusalem and everything. What happens is all these people in the limbo of the fathers will be resurrected, and then they will see God in all His glory and realize they were right, and then they'll convert to Catholicism. Okay, they'll convert to Catholicism, and then they'll have the faith, and then they will be able to they'll be saved. But if despite this they say, okay, you know what, regardless of the fact that you revealed yourself in all your glory, we still reject you, as the Savior, and we reject the Catholic Church and authority and everything that you taught us, then they go to hell. But this idea that only a select few group of people will be saved because there's just a simple fact that they had faith, that's very much wrong. Okay, you can have faith but not put any works into it at all. So this meme is definitely wrong in this sense. Okay, you will need faith and works to be saved, but if you don't have faith because of a mistake in your life, or because you simply just it's not your fault that you didn't have faith, or if you didn't have works because you died young, or you never had a chance to live, or you were manipulated or brainwashed or whatever, then again that's not your own fault too. Okay, salvation is possible for those people as well. Point 3. Well, clearly this person doesn't understand what speaking in tongues means, and I'm guessing when he says that, he's talking about a Pentecostal church where people do roll around on the floor speaking in tongues, which, to be fair, is more similar to someone who needs an exorcism because they've been demonically possessed, as someone who speaks in actual tongues. Speaking in tongues is when you speak in a language you've never spoken before. For instance, in Pentecost, when the disciples came out of the when the disciples and apostles came out that house after the Holy Spirit descended upon them, they could speak different languages. For instance, if I went to if I came across the members of the East Lightning cult, okay, and I started speaking in perfect Chinese to them because they were Chinese, and then I try to convert them, that would be me speaking in tongues because I don't know Chinese. Okay, I know maybe a couple of words, but I don't know Chinese fluently. But the fact that I'm suddenly speaking Chinese because the Holy Spirit is helping me speak Chinese to try and convert these people, that would be speaking in tongues, not this. And I can't give scientific examples against what they say here because there's simply too many for them, and it's way too vague. But I can give scientific proof of God and Christianity and everything. I'd recommend you look at my biblical archaeology series because there is already some scientific proof there. But this person, he shouldn't have put modern science, history, geology, and biology and physics here because he didn't give any examples for his case. Whereas I could. It's just this is just a bit vague, so I can't go into a whole thing about this because this video is going to be quite long as it is already. So, I mean, you can look at my biblical archaeology series. There's already some good evidence there concerning history and archaeology there. I can go into other sciences at some point in time, but just know that this person put forward no evidence for any of the fact for his claims of how these sciences apparently disprove Christianity. Okay, they actually prove it, but this is just simply too vague to make a statement much about right now. And I can make videos about why this does prove Christianity at a later date. But just know that point 3 is wrong. Point 2. So a low success rate for prayers. Well, you need to keep in mind what are the majority of prayers exactly. There's a lot of memes and stuff saying about how people claim God doesn't exist because they prayed that they would get a bike when they were 8 or whatever, and they didn't get it. Is that really enough proof that prayers don't work? Because you need to actually look at the content of the 99% of those prayers. Okay, I'm sure you could get the majority of those prayers out the way with, okay, what are they asking for? Are they asking for, are they asking for bicycles? Are they like children's prayers? Asking for bicycles, asking for money, asking for a big house and mansion, or asking for a unicorn? Then you can throw this out the window effectively because, I mean, okay, the most thing you can probably throw out the window because they're not exactly needed, and God is not some sort of dog that will do tricks when we ask him to. Okay, he's not a genie that is going to give us all of our wishes because that's what we want. Okay, he does what he needs to do. Okay, he gives us what we need, and so when it comes to prayers, if you ask for a prayer, if you ask something from God, he'll give you 3 answers: yes, no, or wait. For instance, if he says yeah, if he gives, okay, well, obviously if he does answer your prayers with a yes, well, that's pretty self-explanatory. If he says no, then you're probably asking the wrong question. Or if he says wait, then it means hold on, there's already something coming up. You don't need to ask me for this. But again, you need to look at the content of those prayers before you criticize whether or not God answers them. Because in a situation like this person clearly doesn't understand that. I mean, I wouldn't say that the majority of my prayers have been answered. I mean, I do usually pray the same prayers. But that's because I have regular prayer schedule. But sometimes, if I pray for something such as, you know, someone in the world, a group of people on earth being helped for something, for instance, if I pray for, you know, people in Afghanistan to be helped, then I'm not expecting that the entire country is helped all at once. Maybe a few people at a time I pray are helped, and maybe I'll never know that. But you know, I'm fine with praying nonetheless, because whether or not I see the implications of it, because I'm praying for someone else, whether or not I see that, it doesn't matter. The fact is, I'm praying, and really, that's what matters. Okay. You don't have to see your prayers being fulfilled to know that they are fulfilled. What you may also notice, relating to that, what you may notice is when you look at the majority of these prayers, is that they're probably for selfish reasons. Whereas if you pray for someone else, you may actually start seeing, okay, these prayers are being answered. So this person doesn't really understand the concept of prayers and their purpose. And then, point 1. Well, this is a double-bladed sword for this meme. Because yes, there are a lot of Christians out there who don't know as much about the faith as our critics do. But among those critics, this person actually knows less than probably than the majority of those critics, which would mean that the majority of Christians actually do know more about the faith than the person who made this meme does. In my perspective, I would say that I know more about the faith than the majority of Christians and the majority of critics of ours. Okay, I don't know more than everyone, but I know more about the majority of people. And I definitely know more about the faith than this person here, because they've clearly established that they don't know much about it. So them trying to lump themselves into a group of intellectual atheists and agnostics, critics, whatever, because they know more about the faith than the majority of Christians, what they've actually done is they've completely undermined themselves. So they'll probably be at instead of being at like the upper end of, you know, all these critics knowing so much about the faith, they're probably at the bottom end of those critics. Maybe the critics would even consider them if one of the fellow critics, because this person really doesn't understand what they're saying in this thing. I mean, I've been pulling apart this entire guy's arguments, pointing out that he doesn't understand the Trinity, he doesn't understand salvation, he doesn't understand science much, he doesn't understand the divine nature. The only Christians that he can know more about the faith are the dumbest ones. Okay, and that's setting the bar very low. Taking metaphors literally, or taking literal words metaphorically, mistranslations, misunderstandings, taking things out of context. This guy's done it all. He really has. So again, just because it's a meme doesn't necessarily mean you need to believe it. If I met this guy online, in some sort of like, if I met him on Facebook and I debated with him, I would probably I would crush him. Okay, not trying to sound prideful here, but I would crush him in what he's saying because his arguments are so weak. And I'm not setting the bar low for myself as well. Okay, I'm not setting it low. The only reason why I probably wouldn't win was because he blocked me. Or he just kept spanning the same arguments. I said, well, you can keep going around in circles now. But this guy really does not understand much about the faith. And instead of hating him for it, I'm more pitiful for him, okay? I pity him that he has such a small understanding of the faith. Which is why I actually think that depending on how this guy lives in life, he might actually have a chance of salvation. And it's because he's been so brainwashed by modern society into thinking Christianity is all this, that his lack of faith is not necessarily his own fault. But then again, if he was just generally a bad person and God saw, okay, well, his heart's reprobate, then he may not be saved. But again, that's up to God. But that's effectively this meme refuted. So yeah, I know it's a bit long, this video, but it's important to cover all these 10 points because there's quite a lot going into there, and I only covered some of them briefly. I can make videos covering some of these points more in depth, and there are already other videos out there that do that already. But yeah, so this video effectively refuting this not anti-Christian memes, but just this anti-Christian meme with that required a lot of explanation for it. That's it effectively for this video. So if you like this video, please give a like, please do share my videos, and please do comment on what you think of them and any other videos you want me to do. Please do subscribe to my channel so you can see more of this content, and please do ring the bell so you can get. I say my outro so fast sometimes. I'm trying to slow it down. Please do ring the bell so you keep updated with my video releases and my refuting memes videos. And next episode, yeah, just give me in the comments. Give me more memes that you want me to refute. And next episode of refuting anti-Christian memes, I'll just be refuting more anti-Christian memes. Yeah, so look forward to that, guys. Don't worry, Christians out there, whether or not you're Catholic or not. I'll be refuting memes that criticize us, just to prove to you that the case against Christianity and Judeo-Christianity is very weak. But the refuting those memes will be for the next video. So anyway, God bless you all. See you next video, comrades. Until then.